What would it take to end a conflict that has lasted more than 40 years and claimed over 40,000 lives? This week, Turkey's parliament moved one step closer to answering that question when a commission approved a sweeping 60-page roadmap linking legal reforms to the disarmament of the Kurdistan Workers Party, or PKK. The decision shifts a decades-long armed struggle into the legislative arena, raising a deeper question: can law succeed where force has failed? If this process succeeds, Turkey could close one of the longest-running insurgencies in modern Middle Eastern history, unlocking economic growth in its southeast and reshaping security dynamics in Iraq and Syria. If it collapses, violence could resume across borders, reigniting instability inside a NATO member state and complicating regional alignments already strained by wars and shifting alliances. The conflict began in 1984 when the PKK launched an armed insurgency, initially seeking an independent Kurdish state in southeastern Turkey. Over time, its objectives evolved toward demands for greater cultural rights and limited autonomy. The confrontation has since spanned rural insurgency, urban bombings, cross-border operations into northern Iraq, and political crackdowns within Turkey. More than 40,000 people have been killed, including civilians, militants, and security personnel, while entire communities in predominantly Kurdish provinces experience displacement and economic stagnation. The PKK is designated as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the United States, and the European Union. Turkish armed forces, leveraging advanced drone warfare and cross-border bases, gradually pushed the group's fighters into mountainous areas of northern Iraq. Sustained military pressure reduced the PKK's operational space inside Turkey, creating conditions where negotiations regained traction. Last year, the organization announced it would halt decades of attacks and declared an intention to disarm and dissolve, signaling a potential strategic pivot. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in power for more than 2 decades, has previously attempted peace initiatives, most notably between 2013 and 2015. That earlier process collapsed amid renewed violence and political polarization. The current effort differs in structure. Instead of informal talks dominating the agenda, the process now centers on a parliamentary commission formed in August 2025 to draft a formal legislative pathway. The Commission's report, approved by 47 lawmakers with 2 opposing votes and 1 abstention, outlines a conditional legal framework. Its stated objectives include creating a terrorism-free Turkey and strengthening democratic institutions. The proposal envisions the judiciary reviewing relevant laws to align them with rulings from the European Court of Human Rights and Turkey's Constitutional Court. It also recommends clarifying anti-terror legislation so that non-violent acts are excluded from terrorism definitions, alongside expanding freedoms of expression, press, and assembly. Crucially, the legal reforms are tied directly to verified PKK disarmament. The roadmap calls for a temporary and separate legal framework overseen by a specially appointed executive authority. Judicial scrutiny would continue throughout implementation to avoid the perception of a blanket amnesty. This sequencing reflects political sensitivity. Reforms and disarmament are designed to move reciprocally and in parallel, reducing the risk that one side advances without tangible steps from the other. On the ground, symbolic gestures have already occurred. The PKK has reportedly burned some weapons publicly and announced plans to withdraw remaining fighters from Turkish territory as an initial phase toward reintegration. The move follows appeals from its imprisoned leader Abdullah Öcalan, who remains a central ideological figure despite decades in detention. Reintegration would require structured legal pathways, potentially including reduced sentences or monitored civilian participation in political life. What if verified disarmament proceeds smoothly over the coming months? In that scenario, Parliament could codify reforms that address long-standing Kurdish grievances while preserving national unity. Southeastern provinces, historically lagging in income and infrastructure, might attract greater investment once security risks diminish. Turkey's defense expenditures tied to internal counterinsurgency operations could decline, reallocating fiscal resources toward reconstruction and development. Cross-border tensions in northern Iraq could ease, especially if Ankara scales back military operations there. However, consider a second scenario. What if verification falters or factions reject disarmament? Splinter groups could resume attacks, undermining trust and empowering hardline voices within Turkey's political spectrum. Public support for reform could erode rapidly if violence reappears. The government, wary of appearing lenient, might suspend legislative changes, returning the issue to a security-first approach. That reversal would likely intensify friction in northern Iraq and potentially complicate Turkey's posture in Syria, where Kurdish armed groups remain influential. Regional consequences extend beyond Turkey's borders. The PKK's presence in Iraq has long strained Ankara-Baghdad relations. A successful peace process could reduce Turkish cross-border military operations, stabilizing parts of northern Iraq. In Syria, where Kurdish-led forces play a role in counterterrorism dynamics, shifts in Ankara's domestic Kurdish policy could recalibrate broader security arrangements. European institutions, particularly the European Court of Human Rights, will monitor whether Turkey aligns domestic legislation with international rulings, influencing Ankara's already complex relationship with the European Union. The economic dimension is equally significant. Turkey's southeast has underperformed national averages in employment and industrial output. Decades of instability discouraged large-scale private investment. If reforms enhance legal predictability and civil liberties, domestic and foreign investors may reassess risk calculations. Conversely, stalled implementation could perpetuate uncertainty, constraining economic integration of the region into national supply chains. Some external observers attempt to interpret this process through unrelated geopolitical lenses, including South Asian politics. However, there is no direct operational link between Turkey's internal Kurdish peace initiative and policy decisions taken by India's government. While global powers observe developments carefully, the drivers of this process are rooted primarily in Turkey's domestic political calculus, security assessments, and evolving Kurdish strategy rather than actions by external administrations. Ultimately, the Commission's vote transfers responsibility from armed actors to lawmakers. The coming months will test institutional capacity. Verification mechanisms, judicial oversight, legislative drafting, and executive coordination must function in synchrony. Erdogan's leadership faces a dual challenge of satisfying constituencies, demanding security guarantees, while convincing reform advocates that meaningful democratization will follow.